6 months after my brother's death, I was approached by a lawyer. You have a chance to inherit $50 million on the condition that you find out the culprit who victimized your brother, but he died in a mental hospital, and the police have confirmed it was a suicide. This huge inheritance is really hot, yes or no? Seattle, a cafe. Attorney Wu sits across the table, bringing news of my brother's death. How did you die? Suicide, hiss in debt and overwhelmed. On the contrary, your brother had a successful career, and left a huge inheritance behind. I snorted lightly. He left more money, what do I care? The man pushed over a stack of materials. Your brother's will. You have the opportunity to inherit $50 million. $50 million. It's a godsend. It's so tempting. There's no reason to turn it down. You can pay for it by signing. The man gazed at me. Not so fast. There are conditions. I leaned back in my chair and sneered. I knew that he was not so kind that he would give me money for no reason. The other party sighed. Your brother has always felt guilty about you. The last time he talked about you guys, he cried a lot. I interrupted him. Don't talk about things that can't be undone. Say specific conditions that I don't promise to fulfill. Find out who did this to him, and help him take care of his son. I stood up. Finding the murderer was a matter for the police. Raising a child and his wife, I didn't have that in me. The man stood up too, and shoved a stack of information at me. I'm only staying for 3 days, so go over the information and get back to me before you return home. When I was 6 years old, my parents died in an accident and the family fortune was raided by relatives. My brother and I were the only minors, left in a happy family of 4. My brother was 14 years old and was living with my aunt. He followed the advice of others and gave me up for adoption to a couple. For the first 2 years I got by, but since my adoptive mother gave birth to my younger brother, my treatment has gone downhill. I ate leftovers and rancid food, picked up ragged clothes to wear, and had to do housework and bring up children. My foster father was drunk. My foster mother was angry. My younger brother was crying. No matter which one of these things happened, they all had to take it out on me, and beat me up. I thought I would be able to survive until I was 18 and go to college, to go away to a faraway place. I never thought that, when I finally received the acceptance letter, the words of my adoptive parents shattered the vision. Electronic factories are hiring. Do not have to blow in the sun. High income. Just to subsidize the family. Dad, Mom, I've been admitted to college. When I graduate, I won't have to worry about finding a job, and I'll surely repay you. You're right, it'll be a long time before you graduate. How can your brother get a wife? My adoptive father was so angry that he tore up the acceptance letter and beat me up, ordering me to go to work the following week. With my hopes dashed and my way out of this world, I had the urge to kill. I'm taking this family to hell. Just as I was planning the killing, my brother, David, who had disappeared for 12 years, appeared. He stopped me on the road to identify with me. He bought me new clothes, took me to dinner, and brought me back to his home, promising to pay for my college education. In that hut of less than 10 square meters, I felt more at ease than I had ever felt before. The long-lost affection gradually revived, until one day, the foster parents found the place and they blocked the doorway, making a scene, and jumping around cursing hard words. It just so happened that her brother's fiancé came over and bumped into her, and the girl was so shocked that she called her brother back and started arguing. Through the thin walls, I heard the girl say, this house was going to be a new house, that 2 people so far, she came to how to live. My brother coaxed in a low voice. The girl did not relent, screaming in a high voice, this house has me without her, she without me, you choose. I curiously pressed my ear against the wall to hear how David replied, okay, it's all up to you. In a few days, I'll send Ashley back. Choose you. Okay. I straightened up indifferently. not much saddened to hear that answer. It's too much of a stretch to say he's surprised and saddened that he gave me away in the first place, and now he's giving me up again. I packed my things in silence. This time, I can't wait for him to send me away. In leaving on my own, for 3 whole days, I nestled in my apartment and read the information lawyer Wu gave me no less than 10 times. Before the deadline came, I dialed the phone number of Mr. Wu. Half a month later, I set foot on the land I had been away from for 10 years. I rented a small apartment in the city where my brother lived before he was born. In the bathroom, I meticulously painted my makeup in the mirror for more than an hour. 10 years ago, I had the chance to meet a precious person who sponsored me to study makeup abroad. Today, I have become a little famous makeup artist and will receive many invitations from theater groups and starlets, even including some makeup ball. After all, after my hands make up, even my own mother would not recognize. Looking at myself in the mirror, long hair and shoulders, with a pair of black-rimmed glasses, demure with a bit of intellectual, I smiled with satisfaction. Starting today, I'm going to risk my life and let go for that $50 million inheritance. I succeeded in my job search in a wealthy villa district and successfully became a live-in tutor for the owner's child, John. After a week of tutoring, the grumpy bear of a child was both in awe and admiration of me. That day, John served soup to his mom and said calmly, "Mom, have some soup." The hostess put her arms around her fat son, too excited to believe. She told John, "John has been a good boy lately. When your dad comes over at the weekend, he'll be happy to see you get closer to him, and he'll buy you a present." Its happy atmosphere suddenly dropped to freezing point. John slammed the bowl hard. "He's not my dad. My dad's dead. If he comes to the house, I'll kill him." The mistress of the house changed her face. The nanny was silent. I put down the dishes. "You don't have to worry. I will go to coax him." Walking into the children's room, John was rummaging around. I asked him what he was looking for, and he whispered, "Dad's pictures." I was struck by the thought, "Where do you keep your dad's things?" He thought for a while, suddenly jumped up. "Dad things are thrown by Mom in the underground storage room. The teacher and I go to look for it together." "Okay." I took John to the lady of the house, who was so annoyed by the commotion that she asked the babysitter to take us to the basement. The babysitter opened the storage room, and I told her to get busy, so I took John inside. The storage room was damp and dank, and the greenish-white light made it even colder. Relics were partly in cardboard boxes, and partly scattered in the corners. I told the boy to look in the clutter while I carefully examined the contents of the boxes. When picking up an old suit jacket, the weight felt wrong, and feeling along the pocket of the suit, there was something rectangular and hard inside. Putting my hand inside, I felt what appeared to be a hard-shell notebook. I was about to pull it out and check it out when I heard a piercing voice, "Looking for gold? Come out quickly." At the same time, the room echoed with John's cheerful voice, "Found it." 2 voices sounded at the same time. Footsteps are getting closer and closer. I hastily retracted my hand and came closer to John. John was holding a photo frame in his hand, and there was a thick photo album underneath. I quickly shoved the album into John's hand and whispered, "Take this one too." Meanwhile, the hostess walked up to the door of the storage room and stared at us with a sullen face. "What's taking you so long to find something? Come on out." I stood up and pulled John outside. The hostess saw the album, frowned tightly. "Take a photo even? Need to be so thick a big book?" I secretly pinched John, and the kid reacted pretty quickly, stomping his feet and screaming, I don't care. I want it. I want it." I take the thick albums with a gesture. "The house is too cold and the kids will get sick if they stay too long. I'll send the album back when John picks it out." The hostess was screaming her head off at the bears, "So remember to put it back, and don't mess with those things." When I got back to my room, I wiped the frame clean and handed it to John, asking softly, "Is this Dad?" John sat quietly on the bed, his hands on the frame, his eyes staring straight at the man in the photo. The man was wearing an outdated suit, sitting on the grass in the countryside, with his chubby son in his arms, his eyebrows stretched and a silly smile on his face. It was the same familiar look, but without the impression of depression. I say the man in the photo is familiar because he is my blood brother, David, and the John in front of me is my brother's son. John's huffing and puffing from his side. I put my arm around my little nephew and asked softly, "Miss Daddy?" He shook his head and nodded, a little, thinking, "How's Dad treating you?" When I was little, he was very good to me, always hugging me, playing with me, buying me good food. Then Dad got sick, and it wasn't good anymore. What kind of illness did Dad have? Dad had a brain tumor and changed after surgery, always fighting with Mom and breaking things. My heart fluttered. When did that new Dad show up? John grits his teeth and corrects, "It's not Dad, it's the damn man. He's the one who said Dad had a crazy disease, and took him to the mental hospital." Late at night, I sat at the table and looked through the photo album my brother left behind. I hadn't seen him for 10 years. My blood was thicker than water, but my kinship was thin. The thick album carries David's short life. Inside are the happy moments of my brothers and my childhood. There are also a handful of one-shots after the family's fall from grace, a thin, lean young man with a faintly somber look between his eyebrows. I think the life of a foster family is not smooth. Scroll back even further for a picture of him after he started his family, and a moment of warm and radiant smiles. The family happiness continued for many years, until John was about 4 years old and came to an abrupt end. A gap appeared in the back, and I flipped quickly as I went along, and some more photos appeared in the final section. My brother was not in the photos. Like a random street shot, there was no subject matter, just run-down streets and pedestrians in 2s and 3s. My eyes stared and realized that there was something familiar about the background street, recognizing it for a long time. How could it be the road near my adoptive parents' home? I took the photo out and put it in front of my eyes for a closer look, and my heart abruptly trembled. Among the few passers-by, I found myself as a teenager. There were backs, sides, and the occasional shot of a face at a tricky angle. Here's a sneak peek of my brother. There's writing on the back of the photos, each with the date and what Ashley is doing. I've organized the photos chronologically. Heck, it actually lasted 5 years, from when I was 13 to 18. I raised my hand and rubbed my sore nose and eyes. Turns out, my brother was once in my world, only then, he was out of my sight. I sat up until the wee hours of the morning, flipping through the photos. Why is he filming me? Why didn't he recognize me? I can't sleep anyway. I'm consolidating relevant information in my head. The next step is to focus on the investigation. Is my brother really crazy, or is he being framed? Who is that wild man? Is he one of the culprits? If my brother is framed for mental illness, my sister-in-law Emily is definitely not involved. There's no rush. I'll let her bounce around for a few days. It's Sunday, and Mistress Emily's new love is making an appearance. The doorbell rang, and I stood at the corner of the second floor looking down as a tall, imposing man walked in. He asked the nanny if Man and John were up yet. The nanny replied, "Mrs. got up early and is in John's room." The man casually handed the bag to the nanny. "Later I'm going to take the two of them out. I won't be home for dinner today, so pack what you're going to bring." It's like a man of the house. I grabbed my cell phone and quietly filmed him. The man was sharp, his gaze sweeping over like a sword. I met his eyes, then looked down as if nothing had happened, fiddling with my cell phone as I made my way downstairs, brushing shoulders on the stairs. The man glanced at me and asked his fellow nanny in a low voice, "Who is this?" The nanny explained, James, John's live-in tutor. He HMMD and continued upstairs. It wasn't long before the man descended the stairs with a crying John in his arms, followed by a smiling ex-sister-in-law, Emily. Emily saw me appear in the living room, and instructed, "Mr. James, we're going out as a family and won't be back until late, so feel free to move around." I said thanks and watched them leave, noting the man's license plate number in the process. Back at the villa, I asked the nanny, pretending not to notice who that man was. The nanny, with a gossipy face, whispered to me that it was the latest boyfriend and that the two were getting married soon. "This man looks like a boss. What kind of business?" Before that, he was a fitness instructor, and it was only through his wife that he opened a gym as an owner. I laughed. "No wonder. It looked pretty fierce." Nanny bristled. "Not so. Heard the last nanny talk privately. That man used to work in a mental hospital, and then turned to coaching. Cannot be fierce." I thought for a moment. Listening to John said, "His own father. Is this man to send in? It seems quite capable." The nanny looked mysterious. "The lady is most afraid of mentioning his ex-husband. John mentioning her will blow up. You can be careful not to touch the bad luck." I went back to my room and took out the photo album. "Sister, while Mrs. is not there, I put the photo album back, so that she will not come back to see unhappy." The nanny was busy and told me that the storeroom was unlocked, and that I should go there myself. "This is just what I wanted." I said, "You busy? Hurry to the basement." Walking into the storage room, I put down the albums and went straight for the cardboard boxes, pulling out the inside of my old suit. It was, as I expected, a hard-shell notebook. I hid the item in my arms, told the babysitter I had to go back to the house, and left the villa. Back at my grandmother's house, I pulled out the notebook, which had a combination lock on it, so obviously no one had touched it. I guess Emily was too lazy to dig through the pockets of her old suit when she packed up her belongings, so the notebook survived. The combination lock is a 6-digit number, and I tried several times without success. Holding on to my last hope, I typed in my birthday, and to my surprise it opened. Flipping through the diary, the first page is dated 22 years ago, July the 16th, 1993. I'll never forget the day I gave Ashley away. She was 6 years old, her voice was hoarse from crying, and my heart was broken into pieces, but I let go and left her with a heart of gold. "Forgive my brother's incompetence. I'm going to work hard for my money. I'm going to grow up fast, and the day I can afford it, I'm going to get Ashley back." May the 18th, 2005, a private investigator finally found Ashley's current address. Tomorrow is Ashley's birthday. I don't have much money left in my hand after the traveling expenses, just enough to buy her a birthday cake. Will she dislike me as a poor brother? May the 19th, 2005, it's so hard on the heart. I heard from a neighbor that her adoptive parents had another baby, and Ashley wasn't doing well. I saw Ashley. She was thin and skinny, walking alone. I didn't dare show up in front of her. I couldn't give her hope and disappoint her. I want to take her away, but I'm going to have to send her away. Ashley, just bear with me a little longer. My brother will try to make money to pick you up. I sniffled when I saw this. What an idiot. My brother wrote in his diary that he entrusted his birthday cake to a neighboring grandmother to pass on. I searched my memory and it was true. Unfortunately, I only had one bite of the cake before my brother snatched it away, for which I was severely beaten. Since then, I've been as protective of my food as a wolf, immediately shoving anything good into my mouth. The diary spanned a wide range of time, and most of it had Ashley's presence in it. Picking me up seems to have become David's obsession. In the years that followed, my brother saved up money to visit me in B City every year, but every time, he didn't have the courage to face me. It wasn't until I was 18 that my brother finally got up the courage to show up and take me back to the house he bought against the mortgage. During those 6 months of living together, he went to great lengths and tried to make it up to me, but was too careful and clumsy for me, who had grown up in a den of wolves, to notice. Whenever I showed detachment and indifference, my brother would grieve and blame himself for his bad decisions that had gotten me into trouble in the first place. The foster parents came to cause trouble, and my brother was worried about the effect on me over time. He delayed the wedding and talked to his boss about contracting the construction of 2 buildings. He wants to fight to make more money and buy me a house. During that time, my brother did not go home. I thought he was hiding from his adoptive parents, but I did not realize that he was at the construction site day and night desperately trying to meet the deadline, until the day his girlfriend came over with him to kick me out. My brother, in order to perfunctorily girlfriend, pretended to promise to send me back, but he did not realize that I overheard his words and believed them. He left first. David went crazy, looking around for me, got sick in a hurry. His girlfriend complained about him. He slapped her and broke up with her, under pressure. My brother went back to work. Since then, in addition to desperately trying to make money, he was asking around for news about me. Later, he got drunk once and had sex with Emily. Not long after the two were married, and less than 6 months after the wedding, my sister-in-law fell and went into premature labor, giving birth to a boy. His brother named the baby John. 2 years ago, my brother woke up with a sudden numbness in one limb and couldn't see out of one eye. The results of the hospital tests showed that my brother had a pituitary tumor that had pressed on the nerves, and if it progressed any further, it could lead to epilepsy or even paralysis. The only way is to have surgery to remove the tumor, but the brain nerves are densely packed and surgery is risky. David's last pre-op diary entry records that he approached attorney Wu to write a will. In his will, he divided his current estate in half to his wife and children and half to me. When I saw this, tears rolled down my face. After a long time, I didn't bother to wipe them away, letting the tears flow freely, just as I was feeling at the moment, needing catharsis. My brother's post-operative recovery was okay. I don't know if it was nerve damage, but he always had trouble sleeping through the night, and he was getting more and more agitated. With the rapid development of the real estate industry, David's assets are getting stronger and stronger, and even if he retires, he will have no worries about food and clothing for the rest of his life. The always busy brother returned to the family, but young and sister-in-law, but began to not home. Emily is a full-time wife with a day shift nanny at home, and her days consist of shopping and going to the beauty salon or gym. My brother values his family as his only spiritual support, but whenever he advised his wife to focus more on the family, Emily would argue with him. At one point, Emily blurted out, "What am I supposed to do at home? Stay with a sick old man?" That sentence is really hurtful. David cannot understand. He is for the family toiling, never outside the womanizer. Why is sick? Emily cannot be like other people's wives, careful, care and considerate. Since then, the diary no longer see the description of the happiness of the family. Between the lines are brothers' complaints and anger. The latter recounts that the two men's conflicts intensified and even fought. In the last 6 months, David heard the wind and caught the adultery several times without success. When he went out, he was attacked from behind several times. My brother also noticed that the medication he was taking seemed to have been tampered with. He began to stay up all night. His hair fell out in large clumps. His eyes bulged and his face was distorted. He became more irritable, and when he was in a mood, he couldn't control himself and would smash things in the house. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't help it. His memory is getting worse and worse. He forgets words when he puts pen to paper, and he speaks in a proverbial way. Occasionally when he was awake, he felt out of sorts and couldn't tell if someone was really harming him, or if he was hallucinating. He had a premonition that he would not live long, and once again approached attorney Wu to explain his afterlife. Over the years, Hiss used his engineering work to withhold several houses behind Emily's back. He put the house license and the key, both in a bank safe deposit box, and asked Attorney Wu to do everything he could to find me, and give them to me. The market value of $50 million of real estate is the secret operation. The surface, his second will, the existing joint property of the couple to do a good job of division, belonging to his share of all gifts to me. He told Attorney Wu that he wanted a divorce, but if something bad happened to him before the divorce, he asked Attorney Wu to make a rider when he found me to help him uncover the murderer and bring him to justice. He asked me to take care of his son for him, until John grew up. Lawyer Wu asked him, not afraid of Ashley swallowing the property and not giving you revenge, or raising your son? Brother smiled bitterly. Ashley is not that kind of person. I believe her, even if he really does that. I have no complaints. After all, I owe him too much. February the 15th, 2015, I came back from Counselor Wu's place, finally relieved of one thing: as long as Ashley came back, whether I was alive at that time or not, she would be clothed and fed for the rest of her life. There's not much time. I need to catch up on another thing. Ashley hates her adoptive family so much that when she is able to do so one day, she will come back for revenge. I can't let Ashley's hands be stained with blood. I'll take her revenge. When I saw this, my heart thumped. How is David going to avenge me? March the 18th, 2015. I finally avenged Ashley's death when that family got into a car accident and was seriously injured, if not killed. I've got someone following up to get them out of the city if they're still alive, so Ashley never sees them again. I do have plans to get back at that family when I return home, only to hear that they were in a car accident. The adoptive father is dead, the adoptive mother is crippled, and the cheap brother is crippled. The family couldn't make ends meet, went into debt, and later disappeared. The laptop fell to the ground. The foster parents' family was brutalized at my brother's hand, and it was all for me. The heart felt like it had been torn open raw and was whistling with cold air. I fell to my knees and held the journal dead against my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. I wanted to shake him up. You don't owe me anything. Who made you carry such a heavy burden? Can't you live well? A week later, I received an email from a private investigator. Michael, 32, graduated from nursing school and works as a male nurse in a psychiatric hospital. 5 years later, he was fired after being reported for patient abuse and allegedly molesting a female patient. He wandered around jobless for a few years and then worked as a trainer at a gym owned by a friend. He's tall, good-looking, and he's a good worker, so he's highly sought after by the female members. He and his sister-in-law, Emily, probably hooked up at the gym. This man is ruthless and has complicated social relations, and his brother has been sneak attacked several times, and he has nothing to do with it. On Friday, Emily was home and I purposely took the day off in exchange for a vacation. Back at the rented house, I spent 2 hours putting on my makeup, looking in the mirror and changing into a figure highlighting fashion. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. In the mirror, the hot, glamorous woman. Where is the slightest shadow of modesty and simplicity? With a Hermes bag on my back and a rented Porsche, I went to keep watch by the commercial building. The target finally appeared. I started the car, slowly followed a Toyota Bidge into the underground parking lot. Seeing that the other party was reversing, I put my foot on the gas, creating an inadvertent cut. Waiting for a few moments, Amelie's new lover, Michael, got out of the car angrily, cursing and running straight to me. I slowly lowered the window, revealing a look of watering eyes. Michael was going to yell, but the moment he saw me, he was like a stuck man. You did not wait for the other party to open his mouth. I hastened to state, Big brother, I'm sorry. It's me who didn't pay attention. I'm fully responsible for it, and I'll fix the car for you. The man instantly mute, scratched his head, changed into a gentle expression. After driving a little attention, how dangerous it is. The responsibility of the accident is clear. I bear full responsibility. Should have reported to the insurance claim. I excuse my husband's car. Do not want to let him know. I discussed with Michael. He first repair his own car. Later I personally compensation. Both sides left their contact information. I pretended to casually ask, brother, ask around. Here is a manor gym. It's my first time here and am not familiar with it. The man's eyes light up. Is he going to the gym? I nodded my head. I had heard that this one was pretty legit, and wanted to check it out, and get a card if I could. The man smiled as if a cat had seen a fish. Beauty, you are really bumping into fate. Let's go. I happen to work there. Take you there to visit. I immediately got out of the car and paralleled the man. When the man saw me dressed in this body, he was surprised for a moment and his attitude was more attentive. Walking into the penthouse gym, I looked around at my surroundings, medium class, and figured Emily had poured a lot of money into it. I pretended to understand some, and deliberately asked if there is a private tutor. The man heard more enthusiastic. I am the owner of this store, sister. If you trust me, I personally teach you. Package your body superb. I didn't say a word to pay for the card. I have to rush to fix my car. Otherwise my husband found out. He will definitely scold me. Next time I come to the gym, please ask the boss to take the trouble to teach me more. Men flirting with such a beautiful daughter-in-law still want to scold. If it were me, not to mention scratching the skin of the car, even if the whole car is scrapped, I do not want to scold a word. Then your wife is really lucky. I have a hard life. My husband is older and has a temper. Well, do not say, next time to talk. The man enthusiastically sent me out the door, and then also generously said, the car just scratched some fur. He repaired himself. Do not need me to pay. I pretended to refuse some, except, thank you Lua boss. Car repair costs to help me save. Meal money cannot save. Some other day about your dinner. The man smiled swinging. Good. Sure. Leaving the gym, I took the car to the repair store. Go home, remove your makeup, put on a different face and get up, and return to the villa as James. Just as I walked into the foyer, I heard a horrible scream. There's a ghost. I changed my shoes unhurriedly and poked my head into the living room, where a close-up of the man appeared on the TV, his ghastly white and blue face, eerie against the shadowy background. Emily, you're so mean to me. The man grinned, like a smile, and said in a single word, I'll be back. Wait for me. The corners of my mouth turned up, when I witnessed Emily covering her eyes in fear and shivering. Emily emotionally yelled, David, you killed yourself. I didn't kill you. Don't look for me. She was so emotional that she ran toward the door as she yelled, nearly colliding with me. She didn't see it was me, and thought it was David showing up, so she dropped to the ground and cowered in fear. I reached down and pulled her up, my tone light. Mom, what's going on? Emily saw that it was me, as if she grabbed a life-saving straw. My deadbeat husband appeared. You help me. Taking advantage of her confused mind, I sprinted a few steps to unplug the power supply, and took the opportunity to turn off the remote control. Madam, it's okay. Take it easy for a moment. Did you misread it just now? Emily pulled me close, leaning against me to draw security, and I fought back the nausea and didn't push her away. Ashley, I was right. It's my deadbeat husband. He's dead, and he's still here to screw me up. I was silent for a moment, wanting to say something. What are you trying to say? Madam, my hometown is in the countryside, and I've encountered paranormal incidents. Usually in this case, it's because the deceased had a grudge in life. Have you wronged him? Emily went pale. So, what should we do? The dead have obsessions. Bad things will happen to the living. Madam, do you want me to go to the temple for you, and ask for an amulet to avoid evil spirits? Yes. Ashley, you are so kind. Tomorrow you will help me to go and ask for one. How much do you want? Just mention it. I promised to do it, and saw Emily shivering up the stairs. I sneered in my heart, Emily, this is just the beginning. The next day, I left the villa again on the pretext of blessing her. At the entrance of the temple, after casually buying a few small scented pouches from a stall, I left, returned to the rented room, and had the fake amulet worked on. I called Michael again, and managed to get a dinner date with this dog man. Over dinner, I positioned my persona as a canary being kept by an older man, as a young rich woman who was physically and mentally lonely. I know, he is obsessed with my body appearance, more salivating in my rich family. I deliberately complained about my husband's age. Temper is still bad. To give him the bait, as expected, this lustful guy bit the hook. A true hunter learns to lurk. I brokered my way patiently and discreetly between the two dogs for almost 2 months. During this time, Roman hung the amulets I had hired on her body and in her bedroom. It wasn't that she was so religious. Any time she left the bomb, she would see ghostly shadows. I told her in advance, there are materials in the scented bag to ward off evil spirits. The taste may not be too good. If you think it is useless, just throw it away. At first, she thought there was a strange odor, but after a long time, she gradually became dependent on it. She began to be exuberant and depressed at times, as my brother had been in the beginning, and was unconsciously short-tempered. She also became suspicious of Michael, and with my hints, the two had many arguments. At first Michael coaxed this money bag. Later, in my other guise, I made rapid progress and hit it off privately with Michael. The man, self-conscious of his new, young, beautiful and wealthy wife, is no longer as warm and accommodating to Emily as he was before. On 2 occasions, Emily picked a fight with him, and they had a heated argument. Michael slapped the woman in the face and slammed the door. I took the opportunity to provoke the relationship between the two. Even the day shift nanny followed suit. Emily began to resent this new love. Emily's mental state is getting worse and worse. I felt the fire was coming on and was going to add fuel to the fire. That day, I excused myself from the temple to get a new amulet for her and left on vacation, quickly dressed. I asked Michael out again, and hinted that I could get a room today. The man had been drooling over me for over 2 months and had long been unable to resist, and was giddy with joy at the news. Estimating the time, I switched to Jame's cell phone and called Emily. In an urgent tone, I told her that I took a taxi and passed by a street, and vaguely saw Michael and a beautiful young woman shopping arm in arm. Emily exploded at the sound of it, and hurriedly asked me where I was, and I told her the general location, and hung up the phone. It was a shopping street with fancy hotels nearby, and I had already made a careful plan to wait for these two to get in the pot. Michael and I met on the shopping street, and I pretended to be loitering, leading him towards Emily's location. Don't ask me how I know where Emily is. I had long ago installed a small program in her phone. Locating and eavesdropping on the contents of the phone were the basic functions. I took Michael on my arm, talking and laughing, and after confirming that Emily was onto us, I took the bastard to the hotel. After the front desk opened the room, we got into the elevator. Before entering the room, I deliberately said to him, "Just saw a woman has been following us. I do not know whether my husband hired people." Michael heard me describe the woman's appearance, then dumbfounded, fearing that Emily came up to stir up the scene. The scene is too ugly, after all. His now self-reporting as a diamond in the rough, the guy coaxed me, saying he'd see what this woman was about first, and told me to leave by the stairs first, after which he'd ask me out again. I was invisible in the stairwell, sneaking a peek at this elaborate farce. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Emily to come to this level as well. Next, the unsuccessful adultery scene played out again, only this time, it wasn't my brother David who caught the adultery, but Emily. Watching the two quarrel and tear, I smiled happily, hoping that my brother in heaven will also see this scene. But this is only a small test of the bull's eye. Next, I will plan an even hotter game. That day, Emily was covered in color. Michael was so enraged that he beat his old lover up and took off. I quickly change James and pick up the wretched woman and take her home. How deep the love is, how deep the hate is. Emily is completely devastated this time and hates the mention of Michael with a passion. Michael contacted me the next day and wanted to relive the duck dream. I disappeared for 5 days before answering his call. This time, we had another appointment in a hotel room, only the atmosphere was tense, and again, he didn't get what he wanted. I told him that my husband had frozen all my assets. I now wanted to divorce him, and needed a large sum of money to hire a lawyer to mediate. This old geezer is practically psychotic, always suspicious of me. I gritted my teeth and cursed. If he died, even if he went crazy, I could inherit hundreds of millions of dollars. Michael was unusually energized to hear this astronomical figure. Sending other people's husbands to mental hospitals was familiar to him. I asked in a hesitant manner, how can a mental hospital be so easy to get into? Don't you need a psychiatric evaluation? Michael put his arm around me and laughed. Baby, your man has a lot of connections. Don't worry. Tomorrow I'll take you to the mental hospital and show you what I'm capable of. I'll make sure your husband gets in and out. Really? I'm being naive. I'm pretending to be naive. You're a good man, but I'm in need of a lot of money to hire a lawyer, and I have to check his credentials. What about the breakdown of production? Michael had a bit of a headache hearing me quoting large sums. His money, always from Emily, had been invested in the gym and he didn't have much cash on hand. I deliberately sighed. Alas, it's a pity that my husband's children are all abroad, or else I can kidnap his children and knock a large sum of money. The man was reminded by my dark poke, suddenly slapped his head. I do know a rich woman. His family has a child less than 7 years old. Very suitable. On this day, Sunday, Emily was almost on the verge of a breakdown. The babysitter takes John to an amusement park, and midway through the day comes calling crying that John has been snatched. Meanwhile, Emily receives an anonymous call on her cell phone. The other party claimed to have kidnapped John, and threatened not to call the police, or else they would tear the ticket. Emily was so scared that she almost fainted. She grabbed my shoulder and cried, "What can I do if something happens to John?" I laughed coldly in my heart. Since the day I came here, I haven't seen this stupid woman care more about John. She dumped John on the nanny and me and focused all her energy on Michael. She used my brother's hard-earned money to support an adulterer and spend it recklessly. John would have been better off without this mom. During this time, after her falling out with Michael, she made me her main focus. I calmly poured her a glass of water and reminded her that someone who could accurately kidnap John must be someone who is familiar with this family. Can you recall if you've offended anyone closer to you recently? Roman was in a trance for a few moments and mumbled that there was no one else but Michael, as if I were talking to myself. Could it be Michael? The woman, spurred on by me, suddenly jumped up from the couch with a maniacal look on her face. It's him. It's him. He knows I'm rich. He's going to take my money and feed that bitch. How nice I am to him. How can he be cruel? Ashley, do you think I am nice to him? I nodded my head and slowed down my tone. Mom, you've been so good to him, investing in his gym, spending money on things for him. You love him so much, but instead, he fell back on a beautiful young woman and kidnapped your child to blackmail you. His heart is so cruel. My tone was gentle, like hypnosis to induce this confused thinking woman. She gritted her teeth. Dog man, dare to use my money to keep a woman. I want him to die. 23. The seeds of hatred have been planted. I gave Emily the idea that for John's safety, he could not go to the police, and could pretend to agree to the blackmail demand. That night, Michael called from an unfamiliar number. I heard him using a voice chainer, asking Emily to raise $5 million in cash and deliver it to a designated location. I told Emily that since she suspected Michael, she might as well hire a private investigator to follow him, and perhaps find John's hiding place. Emily looked up to me, and gave me full authority to make the arrangements. On the third day, I asked Emily to wait for me at the villa while I dressed to contact Michael, as he and I had planned in advance to kidnap John. He only had one helper. John and I don't know each other. Me and my helper take shifts to watch John. John is my nephew, after all, and there's no way I could really hurt him. I dismissed the help and was alone with John. I told John that I was a friend of Mr. Ashley's teacher and was here to save him. I asked John to play along with me so I could get him out. As night fell, I handed the child over to the private investigator, who had come to meet me. Then I called Michael and asked him to come over. Michael said to drive over in an hour. I counted the minutes again and called Emily to say that I had found John's whereabouts, and to tell her to drive here, alone, in half an hour. Half an hour later, I got into Emily's car. In just 2 days, the woman had been emaciated. I gave her a recording of John's cries. "Mommy, come and help me. Michael, the bad guy, is trying to kill me." Emily cried out as she listened, then looked up in ghostly form. I saw Michael's car coming in the distance, and told Emily to leave the engine running, and wait for me. I pretended to get out of the car to poke around. Round the corner, I called Michael, shouting in an anxious tone, "Michael, run. The police are knocking on the door." After that, I hung up and got into Emily's car. To Emily, "Michael is running. Get after him." Emily saw Michael's car was turning around. A look to run away. Immediately accelerated and rushed over. Michael found Emily's car, thought Emily really alarmed the police to find this place, play life racing to escape. Emily's car performance is good, coupled with her indignation and anger, and has been biting Michael's car not to let go. The two vehicles gradually away from the city. There's a stretch of disc road ahead, and I bark at Emily that I can't let him get away, or John will be in danger. Accelerate and ram him. In foreign countries, I am also regarded as one of the speedsters. Even if Emily is driving, I can just as well assist from the side, find the vitals to hit Michael's car. The two cars crashed continuously on the narrow disc road. Fortunately, the night vehicles are scarce. No one witnessed. Another sharp turn ahead. I roared to accelerate. Left hand sharp steering wheel. The corner of the car to stop and hit the other body. Michael's car went over the guardrail and plunged headlong down the panhandle. I yelled for the brakes and pulled the handbrake at the same time. After a near-splitting scrape, Emily's car comes to a close stop at the guardrail. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead and pushed open the car door to look down. The Toyota Bridge rolled all the way to the bottom of the slope, a drop of more than 10 meters. The body twisted into a pile of scrap metal. The gas tank was on fire, and even if Michael was alive, he couldn't climb out of the car with his serious injuries. I turned to Emily and said, "Michael's car fell. He will die." Emily lying on the steering wheel, "God clear trance, he died. He's dead. You crashed him off the cliff." When the police come to ask, "Have you thought about what you're going to say?" Emily was obviously confused in her thinking, and looked straight at me. "He's the one who kidnapped John. Shouldn't I have hit him? You're suspected of intentional homicide. You'll get the death penalty." Emily shook her head back and forth, emotional. "No, I don't want to die. Ashley, help me think of something." I pretended to think and spoke. When Emily was about to explode, "There's a way to avoid sanctions, but it's going to aggravate you for a while. It's all right. It's all right." Emily shook me eagerly. "I'll do anything you want as long as I don't let the police take it away. Pretend to be crazy. I'll say it word for word. Mentally challenged people aren't legally responsible." "How?" I sneered in my mind. "Not pretending. I want you to be really crazy. Michael kidnaps John and you drive after him. In the heat of the moment, You crashed into him and his car fell off. You repeated, Michael is going to kill John. Michael is going to kill John. I'm leaving now to find John. You told the police that you were the only one in the car. It's the only chance you have. You have to take it. Emily was hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital, as expected. When the police arrived on the scene, Emily leapt to her feet and lost control of her emotions, and 2 officers could not hold her down. There was no surveillance on this stretch of road, and the police could only get a general idea of the situation from her incoherent words. After much investigation, the police confirmed Michael's abduction of John, and with the efforts of the attorney I hired for Emily, she was sent to a designated facility for psychiatric evaluation. I'll add a little more excitement to her before we go to the appraisal. In the middle of the night, Emily saw David's ghostly figure again and had a complete emotional breakdown. As Emily's designated agent, I committed her to a mental hospital. Emily offered to meet John, and I told her that she was not in a good position to meet John. The kids are small and prone to mistakes. This woman loves herself more than anything, and after hearing my analysis, she gave up her original idea. This mental hospital is the place where my brother hanged himself, and sending Emily here would be considered a heavenly act. Michael had brought me here before, and befriended his relative who was in charge. After putting Emily in the hospital room, I made it a point to meet the man and fake sobbed about Michael's misfortune. This relative said hatefully, Michael is really unlucky to find such a snake-hearted woman. It was her who sent her ex-husband in. Now it's her turn to go crazy. It's really karma. I pretended to be puzzled and asked, but the relative was vague, and only scolded Emily for harming her husband in the first place. Without mentioning Michael's interference, I laughed coldly in my heart. You are aiding and abetting the evildoer. Sooner or later you will have your retribution. I gave this man some money. When Michael was with Emily, he was very nice to us employees. Now that he's gone, I don't have a chance to attend the funeral. So this is a small token of my appreciation. You're his relative, so please accept it on his behalf. The man took it under false pretenses, and asked me if I still needed to take care of Emily. I shook my head. I'm not related to Emily. Her family went to the house and raided it, and left it alone, so there's no need for me to get involved. You don't have to take my word for it. Feel free to do what you need to do with her, but after all, I am the guardian. I have to come over regularly, and I would like to trouble you, for your convenience. Michael's relative smiled and laughed. Understand. You can come over to see her at any time. After half a month, I came back to the mental hospital, and Emily was emaciated. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale, her cheeks sunken, her gaze cloudy. No longer the exquisitely made-up noblewoman of yesteryear, she stared at me for a long time, as if she had just awakened from a dream, and took my hand and said eagerly, Ashley, finally you're here. You have to help me. I want to get out of here. I pulled out my hand, smiled, and asked, How are you doing here, Mom? Not good at all. She showed me the bruises on my forehead and arms, and the fact that this ward is filled with manic patients who are always bullying and beating me. The nurse even force-fed me medication. I couldn't stay there for a day. I whispered, Michael's family is still appealing, suing you for intentional homicide. The police have been accepted. You hold back for a while. I dredge up connections to fish you. Emily looks horrified and shakes her head. No, I want to get out of the hospital right away. Whatever it takes, you get out of here. You can only go to prison. Do you want to be a death row inmate, or do you want to stay up a little longer and get out and live a free life? Leaving Emily's hospital room, I went back to Michael's relatives. When we met, I had a disgruntled look on my face, and Emily said she was going to sue you for patient abuse. The other person was a little nervous. No, really, she said she wasn't sick and didn't take her meds. It's normal for caregivers to use a little coercion. If you're not happy with that, I can have someone take proper care of her." I smiled faintly and pulled out another wad of money and handed it to him. "I know you hate her for killing Michael and not being able to get the sanctions she deserves. Not only do you hate her, her ex-husband's family hates her too. Since she has done too many sins, it's only right to let her suffer some punishment. However, she's going to talk nonsense when she's sober and get you all in big trouble, so you'd better find a way to shut her up." 3 months later, Emily was really mad. I stood in the hospital room, gazing at the woman tied to the bed with restraints, her hair graying and deep lines appearing around her mouth, making her look 10 years older. She glared at me, a stranger, with hostile eyes. Yes, it is true that I am a stranger to her. Today, instead of wearing makeup as Ashley, I'm back to my original look and identity. I pulled a chair over and sat at the edge of the bed, talking to her in a low voice. "Know who I am? I'm David's sister. I know you and Michael have been looking for me, trying to plot my brother's share of my inheritance, and it's a shame you can't recognize me when I'm right next to you." Emily didn't hear me. I went on. "Well, to give you another identity, I'm still James. I've been advising you as Ashley, and in another capacity, I've been Michael's new target, instigating him to kidnap John so that you can fight each other internally and against each other." Emily's breath began to catch and her eyes turned to me. How can that be? Michael had seen you at my house." I laughed softly. "I am a senior makeup artist. Cross-dressing is just a trivial skill for me. By the way, let me tell you another secret. Your husband's ghost shadow is also my disguise. My brother committed suicide in this ward. Even this bed was where my brother lay. Don't sleep too heavy at night. My brother is lying next to you." No, I'm not mental. I'm getting out. I'm suing you. Don't dream about it. You'll never get out of here alive in your life. You have to hold on. You can't die. If you die, it won't be fun anymore. You bastard." Emily struggled hard and yelled at the top of her voice. "You took revenge on me and Michael, and you kidnapped John. That's your own nephew." "A nephew? How dare you say that?" I laughed coldly and took out a paternity test from my handbag. "John is the child of you and your ex-boyfriend, right? He disliked you and ran away, so you designed to find my brother as a receiver. Poor my brother, on his deathbed, he still wanted to entrust the child to me, until you got him into this place. In order to drive my brother crazy, you purposely stimulated him and told him the truth. How did you know?" "My brother's sick friend told me himself." What do you want to do with John?" I devilishly whisper. "It's up to you. If you're still alive, I'll abuse him, and make his life miserable until he grows crooked, and spends the rest of his adult life in prison. The child is innocent. You can't. As long as you're alive, I'll torture him, and I won't consider calling it quits until you're dead." Emily struggled frantically, and only more painful electric shocks awaited her. A month later, Emily committed suicide in a mental hospital. Just like my brother, on a sunny morning, I took a bouquet of white chrysanthemums to the cemetery. The headstone was inlaid with a picture of David, with a stretched brow and a goofy smile. "Brother, you avenged my adoptive parents for me, and I killed that couple for you. If you know what happened to you, you should be able to take your revenge. As for John, you already knew before you died that he was not your biological flesh and blood. I think you must be very conflicted. After all, this child with you and I have a destiny. I found him a good family. Parents are university teachers. People are kind and upright. John in this kind of family life and grow up. I think it will be much better than you and I in the beginning. Brother, I've realized those properties you left me. Part of it is left to John. Part of it is donated to the orphanage. The day after tomorrow, I'll fly abroad. This is goodbye. Rest in peace." 2 days later, I was at the airport waiting for my flight when I read a message. Patients in a psychiatric hospital suddenly riot and get into strife with the medical staff. 1 dead, 3 injured, and the dead were none other than Michael's relatives. How many innocent patients has he victimized with his power? My brother was one of the victims. Before I left, I found my brother's sick friend, and authorized him to organize a group of patients. They would help me take revenge without being sanctioned. The airplane rose up, looking down through the porthole. The familiar city became smaller, and smaller. Avenged, the leap of joy was overshadowed by the sadness of parting. Farewell, brother. The world is a difficult place, and life is full of misfortune. I hope that those poor children who have lost their loved ones will no longer be uprooted and bullied. All of them can have a bright future.